My father didn't raise his voice often. He didn't need to. He had a way of cutting through a room with a sentence so clean it left no blood on the floor, just silence. That morning in courtroom 11C, he sat across from me, immaculate in a navy wool suit that seemed to absorb the light. His tie was knotted with a practiced, silver-haired ease that signaled discipline, not age. Then he looked at the court reporter and let the hammer fall. "She never served," he said. Every word was sharpened by a precision close to contempt. "She stole our name. Every bit of it is a lie." The sound didn't echo, it landed. 100 heads turned at once, a ripple of eyes and pens pausing mid-note. It was a visceral erasure, a public execution of my history. Someone in the back let out a quiet breath, the sound of a spectator finally getting the blood they'd paid to see. I sat alone at the defense table. On their side, the sterling machinery. My mother, Catherine, draped in pearls and a neutral, untouchable expression. Their attorney, a man with coastal polish and the easy confidence of someone who believes the story he's telling is already truth. On my side, nothing, no stack of binders, no legal team. Just a charcoal coat, my hair pulled back tight, and my hands folded in my lap to kill the small, involuntary tremor living beneath my skin. The room was freezing in that institutional way, as if warmth had been deliberately engineered out of it. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a thin electric buzz that never quite disappeared. The air smelled of lemon polish and paper that had been handled too many times. I didn't flinch, I didn't speak, I just watched the bench. Judge Genevieve Cross had been quiet all morning. She was contained, like someone holding a door shut against a storm no one else could hear. But then her gaze settled on me. It lasted a fraction of a second longer than necessary. It wasn't the look of a judge scanning a defendant for a crack. It was recognition, it was a detail out of place. And in that moment, the debt of justice began to pulse. The air in courtroom 11C is a sterile lie. It's engineered to a precise 68 degrees, filtered of anything organic, and replaced with a cloying, industrial mask of lemon-scented floor wax and the ghosts of old paper. It's a room designed for the clean resolution of messier lives, a place where reality is expected to be flat, documented, and bound in leather. I sit at the defense table. My back is a rigid line of conditioned steel. My hands are folded in my lap, fingers interlaced with a stillness that feels like stone, though beneath the surface, the muscles are vibrating. It's a frequency only a soldier would recognize, the hum of a machine waiting for the green light. Across the mahogany divide sits Julian Sterling, my father. He is the architect of this sterile world. He looks immaculate in a navy wool suit that seems to absorb the fluorescent light rather than reflect it. His silver hair is combed back with a discipline that suggests he has never known a moment of chaos he couldn't litigate out of existence. Julian doesn't look at me. He doesn't have to. He's spent the last hour meticulously dismantling the person I became in the years I was gone. My daughter Alia was always a seeker of attention, he tells the room. His voice is a smooth, low-frequency hum. He doesn't need to shout to destroy. When she left our home, she didn't join the service. She joined a delusion. She invented a life of sacrifice because she couldn't handle the reality of her own failures. Every bit of her story is a fabrication, a theft of valor that mocks every man and woman who truly wore the uniform. The debt of justice settles over me like a heavy shroud. To the reporters and the spectators, Julian's words are a polished truth. He is the pillar. I am the drifter in a charcoal blazer who cannot produce a single piece of paper to prove I existed in the dust. My silence isn't an admission, it's a tactical retreat. I learned long ago that in a kill zone, movement is a target. I am staying small, breathing through my nose, and waiting for the enemy to overextend. Julian thinks my stillness is a crack in the armor. He's wrong. It is the armor. The prosecution moves to the digital evidence. A large monitor flickers to life, displaying a search of the Department of Defense's public portal. The cursor blinks with a rhythmic, mechanical indifference. The name entered, Alia West. The social security number is mine. Search results, 0, the attorney announces. The word echoes with a hollow finality. No enlistment record, no active duty history, no discharge papers. Alia West, according to the United States government, has never served a single day in the armed forces. The room turns cold. I can hear the scratching of pens, the whispered indictments from the gallery. They see a phantom, a fraud. But as the digital nothing stares back at me, the hum of the courtroom lights shifts. The frequency changes. It begins to sync with the pounding of my heart, a rhythmic pulse that takes me back to the dead space outside Kandahar. Suddenly, the lemon wax is gone. The air is thick with the cloying, metallic scent of burnt magnesium and diesel smoke. I can feel the phantom weight of my M5 medical bag pulling at my shoulder, 35 pounds of life-saving gear I'd give anything to have right now. I am 23 years old, my head shaved to the scalp, my skin crusted with a layer of fine, gray silt that never really leaves your pores. I am kneeling in the wreckage of a Humvee that's been peeled open like a tin can. The heat is a physical weight, a shimmering curtain that makes the horizon dance. I'm not a defendant, I'm a medic. I remember the woman I was dragging through that pulverized landscape. Her face was a mask of grit and terror, her uniform torn to reveal a catastrophic bleed in her shoulder. She wasn't a judge then. She was a priority one casualty, slipping through my hands as the blood made everything slick. The sand was stinging my eyes, clogging my throat. I leaned over her, my breath hot against her ear, and whispered the only anchor I had. I didn't tell her it would be okay. I told her the serial number of the hemostat I was clicking into place to clamp her brachial artery. 7904, I hissed into the smoke. Focus on the numbers. 7904, keep that number in your head and you stay in this world. A gavel hit the wood. The sound snapped me back to the present. Miss West. It was Judge Genevieve Cross. She'd been quiet all morning, contained like a storm behind a closed door. Now she was leaning forward. Yes, Your Honor, I said. My voice was steady, minimal, tactical. She wasn't looking at the 0 search results on the screen. She wasn't looking at Julian's smug legal team. She was staring at my right hand. I looked down. My fingers were twitching in a rhythmic, mechanical locking motion, the muscle memory of a medic securing a hemostat. I forced them still, but the connection was made. Judge Cross's eyes stayed on mine for a fraction of a second too long. There was no judgment in them. There was a detail out of place, a memory pressing against the present. The spring is compressed to its limit. My father thinks he's erased me, but I've spent my life stabilized by numbers he'll never understand. I held the judge's gaze and waited. The truth doesn't ask permission, it just arrives. The second morning of the trial starts with the sound of a closing door. It's a heavy, expensive thud that echoes through the wood-paneled vacuum of the courtroom. Julian Sterling doesn't do things halfway. If he is to win, he must not only prove me wrong, he must make it as though the version of me he dislikes never existed at all. He is performing a digital lobotomy in front of a live audience. We must look at the psychological profile of the defendant, Vance Thorne, Julian's lead counsel, says as he paces the well. He has the predatory confidence of a man who's never lost a fight, because he picks the ones he can rig. We have obtained records from Alia's formative years, records that suggest a deep-seated need for reinvention, a history of what her own mother calls elaborate fantasies. I look toward the first row of the gallery. My mother, Catherine Sterling, sits there like a porcelain statue. She's draped in silk and pearls, her face a mask of practiced neutrality. She was the one who packed my duffel bag when I was 18. Her hands were shaking as she handed me a stack of cash I never used. She saw the shaved head. She saw the fire in my eyes. Now she won't even meet my gaze. She's provided the evidence. Old journals, school reports, things stripped of their context and weaponized. They want to frame me, as a girl playing dress-up to escape the sterling standards. I maintain the silence. It's my strongest position. Inside, I'm digging. I know the military database. I know the bureaucracy. A search that returns 0 for a valid social security number doesn't mean the person doesn't exist. It means the file is flagged. It's a red flag protocol. It means my history isn't lost. It's been locked behind a level 4 clearance, a tier reserved for black site operations and assets the government prefers to keep in the shadows. My father has spent decades cultivating favors in the State Department. He didn't just doubt my service. He used his reach to have my unacceptable history suppressed. He's trying to bury me while I'm still breathing. The defendant claims she was part of Operation Iron Suture, Thorne mocks. He spreads his arms, playing to the gallery. A name that appears in no public history books. A unit with no commanding officer, willing to step forward. It is a ghost story told by a woman who couldn't find her place in the real world. The afternoon session brings the first physical blow. I'm called to the stand for a hearing on my psychological triggers. Thorne plays a video. It's grainy surveillance footage from a grocery store 6 months ago. On the screen, I'm standing in the cereal aisle. A car in the parking lot backfires, a sharp, percussive crack. I don't jump in the video, I don't scream. I execute a perfect tactical drop. My body hits the linoleum before the sound fully registers. My hands cover my head. My eyes scan the perimeter with a terrifying, hollow intensity. Does this look like a hero to you? Thorne asks the courtroom. Or does it look like a woman who is fundamentally broken? A woman who has studied the symptoms of PTSD so thoroughly that she has begun to perform them for an audience. I sit in the witness chair. My heels are locked against the floor. The screen flickers, and for a split second, the grocery store linoleum turns into the pulverized concrete of a triage site. The smell of the courtroom's lemon wax vanishes, replaced by that cloying, metallic scent of burnt metal. My skin feels the phantom heat of a localized blast. My body didn't react to a car, it reacted to a pressure wave it's been conditioned to recognize. Is there a question, counselor? I ask. My voice is flat, dead air. Thorne snorts. I think the video speaks for itself, Miss West. It does, Judge Cross interrupts. Her voice is a cool blade cutting through Thorne's theater. The room goes quiet. She's leaning forward, her fingers interlaced on the bench. She isn't looking at Thorne. She is looking at the way I am sitting, the way I'm subconsciously tracking the exits without moving my head. Mr. Thorne, the judge says, you call it a performance. But tell me, why does the defendant's heart rate, as monitored by the courtroom's biometric security bench, spike exactly 3 milliseconds before the audio of the backfire plays on your recording? It's almost as if her body is reacting to the electromagnetic pulse of the video start, a trait commonly found in individuals trained for high-stakes environments. The room holds its breath. Julian's hand tightens on his briefcase. I see his knuckles turn white. The crack in the mirror is widening. The mystery isn't just about my missing files anymore. It's about why the woman in the black robe is starting to fight my war for me. I don't smile, I don't relax, I just stay in the stillness. I am a sergeant first-class medic. I've survived worse ambushes than this. I look at my father, and for the first time since the trial began, I see the flicker of a man who realizes he's standing on shifting sand. The validation gap is still there, but someone is building a bridge from the other side. The silence of the evening recess is more taxing than the noise of the courtroom. I sit in the law library, the only space I'm permitted to occupy while the janitorial staff scrubs the day's residue from the hallway marble. The building is breathing around me, a low, mechanical sigh of ventilation systems and the distant hum of the city. Before me sits a government-issued laptop, its screen a blinding white rectangle that feels like a mockery of my situation. I've tried to access my VA portal 4 times. Each time, the result is a digital wall. Access DNID, Level 4 clearance required. A Level 4 clearance isn't for a Sergeant First-Class medic. It's for the architects of policy, the handlers of Tier 1 assets. The ghosts who operate in countries the State Department doesn't officially recognize on maps. My heart hammers against my ribs, but it isn't fear. It's a cold, analytical fury. Julian Sterling hadn't just used his influence to hide my service. He'd somehow convinced the system that my history was a threat to national security. I realized then that Operation Iron Suture wasn't just a classified deployment. It was a liability. My father has a contact, someone in the shadows of the administration who owes him a debt large enough to bury a daughter. By locking my file behind a Level 4 wall, they hadn't just made me a phantom. They demade me a criminal if I ever tried to prove I was alive. I dig into the metadata of the no record found. Screen Julian's legal team presented today. I'm not a hacker, but I know how to read the language of the bureaucracy. I find the access log. The file was red flagged exactly 48 hours after I sent my first letter home from the field 6 years ago. Julian hadn't waited for me to come home to erase me. He started the process the moment he realized I was actually going to survive the war. I look at the grainy reflection of myself in the darkened laptop screen. My hair is longer now, the charcoal blazer hiding the jagged line of a shrapnel scar on my thigh, but the eyes are the same. I am a gray folder to the world, a secret kept in a lead-lined box. I shut the laptop. The click echoes like a safety being switched off in the empty library. Julian wanted a ghost. He's about to find out that ghosts are the only ones who can walk through walls. The transition back to the courtroom the next morning is a jolt to the system. The institutional coldness is back, pressing against my skin. My father is already there, looking like he's carved from ice. He doesn't look at the laptop bag I carry. He doesn't need to. He thinks the digital wall is insurmountable. The prosecution starts early. They're pushing the narrative of my instability again, trying to link it to my supposed fabrication of trauma. Every time Julian's lawyer, Thorne, speaks, I can taste the copper in my mouth. It's the metallic tang of burnt metal and blood, the sensory ghost of the extraction site. It's a trigger, but I use it as an anchor. Thorne is showing a series of financial discrepancies. Housing credits I received that he claims were obtained through identity theft. He's building a cage of numbers around me. I keep my hands flat on the table. I don't speak. I don't interrupt. I watch Judge Cross. She's different today. She's not looking at the binders of evidence. She's looking at me with a terrifying, absolute clarity. She's waiting for me to break the silence. But I'm a medic. I know how to wait for the stabilization window. During a sidebar, I catch my mother's eye. She looks away, her hand trembling as she adjusts a pearl earring. The validation gap is a physical weight in the room, a pressure that's coiling the spring tighter and tighter. Julian leans over to his lawyer and whispers something, a small, satisfied smirk touching the corner of his mouth. He thinks he's won. He thinks the gray folder is a tomb. He doesn't realize that in my world, the most dangerous things are the ones you can't see on a screen. I look up at the clock. The seconds are ticking toward the moment the spring snaps. I'm not a daughter defending her name anymore. I'm a soldier identifying a target. I adjust my blazer, feeling the phantom weight of my kit. The silence is about to end, but not in the way Julian Sterling expects. The third day of the trial feels like a funeral for a woman who refuses to die. The institutional cold of the courtroom has seeped into my bones. I sit at the defense table, my posture a barricade. Across the aisle, Vance Thorne stands in the center of the well. He spreads his arms wide, a conductor orchestrating a symphony of doubt. He wears a suit that costs more than my last 3 years of civilian life, but his eyes are cheap, narrowed and hungry for the kill. Silence, Thorne says. He lets the word hang in the lemon-polished air. Silence is the refuge of the fraud. We have asked for names. We have asked for a chain of command. We have asked for a single verifiable heartbeat from this supposed service in Kandahar. He turns to look at me, a theatrical sneer curling his lip. And what does Alia West give us? Nothing. Not because she is protecting a secret, but because there is no one to name. No one saw her. No one led her, because she was never there. The conflict is a physical pressure. This is the legal gag. My jaw is so tight I can feel the pulse thrumming in my molars. Behind my eyes, the faces of my squad are as vivid as the men sitting in the gallery. I see Miller's lopsided grin. I see Jackson's steady hands. I see Doc Halloway, who taught me how to pack a wound without looking. I could name the coordinates of the LZ. I could recite the tail number of the bird that pulled us out of the smoke. But if I speak those names into a public record, I am handing my father the rope he needs to hang me for treason. He knows I won't break my oath. He is banking on my honor being my undoing. Thorne leans over the defense table. His breath is a mix of expensive coffee and peppermint. Last chance, Alia. Give the court a name. Give us one person who can verify you were in the sand on the night of August 14th. I taste copper. The sensory jolt is sudden. The fluorescent hum of the courtroom overhead modulates into the electric buzz of a dying radio. The smell of the lemon wax vanishes, replaced by the cloying, metallic stench of burnt metal and scorched earth. The memory of the dust storm surges back, the way the sand felt like needles against my skin. I remember the heat of the fire, licking at the wreckage of the Liaison's Humvee. I remember the sound of the world ending in a percussive blast of concrete and steel. I look at the bench. Judge Genevieve Cross is leaning back, her fingers laced together. She is watching the validation gap widen until it threatens to swallow the entire room. She hasn't moved for 10 minutes. She looks like a statue carved from a trauma she's trying to keep buried. Thorne scoffs at my silence. Nothing, just as we thought. Your Honor, the prosecution moves for a summary judgment. This charade has gone on long enough. I cannot give you a name, Mr. Thorne. My voice is a low, resonant tone that cuts through his theater. The court reporter pauses. The room goes still. I don't look at Thorne. I keep my eyes locked on Judge Cross. But I can give you a sequence. Thorne let out a short, sharp laugh. A sequence? We aren't here for a math lesson, Miss West. We're here for the truth. A triage sequence, I continue. I don't raise my voice. I don't need to. I use the flat, mechanical cadence of a report. On the night of August 14th, 3 casualties were brought into the stabilization point after the primary IED strike. Priority 1, sucking chest wound, right side, tension pneumothorax, occlusive dressing applied with an improvised seal. Priority 2, bilateral blast injury to the lower extremities, artery shattered, tourniquets set at 2:14 hours. Priority 3. I stop, I let the silence do the work, I watch the judge. Priority 3, I say, my voice softening just enough to make them lean in. A female liaison officer. Shrapnel entry right shoulder, high velocity, brachial artery compromised. I used a hemostat, serial number 7904, to clamp the bleed. I told her to remember that number. I told her if she forgot it, she'd lose the arm before the bird landed, or worse. The room tilts. Thorne looks confused, scanning his binders for a rebuttal to a language he was never meant to understand. But Judge Cross, her hand goes to her right shoulder. It's a subconscious, lightning-fast movement. Her fingers curl against the black fabric of her robe, right where the shrapnel would have bitten in. The court will take a 15-minute recess, she says. Her voice is strained, breathless. She doesn't wait for the bailiff. She stands and exits the bench with a slight, protective hitch in her right arm, a ghost of a phantom pain. I sit back. My father is staring at me from across the aisle, his immaculate mask finally showing a hairline fracture of doubt. The gag is still on my mouth, but I've just whispered a secret into the ear of the only person who can hear it. The spring is vibrating, the release is coming. The digital battlefield of the fourth morning is more treacherous than any mountain pass I navigated in the Hindu Kush. Julian Sterling has stopped trying to simply erase my past. Now, he is actively rewriting it. I sit at the defense table, watching the validation gap fill with a manufactured history. It is a narrative designed to make me the villain of my own life. We have uncovered new digital correspondence, Vance Thorne announces. His voice rings with a feigned sense of tragedy that makes my skin crawl. Emails from an encrypted account used by the defendant, sent to the Wounded Warrior Project over a period of 18 months. In these messages, Alia West admits, in her own words, that her claims of service were a necessary fiction to secure housing and medical subsidies. The mystery of my own life is being projected on a 60-inch monitor. I watch the screen. The headers look legitimate. The tone is chillingly close to my own blunt, sparse weary. It is a frame job of surgical precision. Julian didn't just hire lawyers, he hired digital mummers to play my ghost. I lean over my meager stack of papers. My pulse is a steady, tactical beat in my neck. I don't panic. I analyze the evidence like an investigator. I notice a pattern in the timestamps. Every email was sent at 03:00 a.m. on the second Tuesday of the month. I know that rhythm. It's the exact time the Sterling Estate's automated server performs its maintenance backups. It is the signature of Julian's arrogance. He is using his own house's infrastructure to bury me, convinced I am too unstable to notice the wires behind the curtain. Thorne doesn't ask about the war when I am called back to the stand for cross-examination. He asks about the money. He asks about the theft of resources from real heroes. How does it feel, Alia? He leans so close I can see the pores in his skin. To take bread from the mouths of men who actually bled in the dust. The sensory jolt hits me. The institutional cold of the room vanishes. The fluorescent hum overhead modulates into the electric buzz of a dying generator. The smell of the lemon wax is gone, replaced by the cloying, metallic stench of burnt metal and scorched earth. I can taste the copper of old blood in the back of my throat. I don't defend my character, I don't cry. I look past Thorne, straight at my father. The emails are deepfakes, Julian, I say. My voice is flat, dropping into the command tone of the triage tent. You recorded my voice during our last Thanksgiving argument and used an AI synthesis engine to ghostwrite those admissions. But you made a mistake. Julian's eyes, those cold, silver eyes, flicker. You forgot that the Sterling Library has a unique acoustic resonance. I continue. A 3-millisecond hollow delay caused by the mahogany paneling. It's embedded in the metadata of the audio files you attached. You didn't find a confession. You manufactured one in the same room where you used to tell me I would never be enough. The gallery erupts. The spring is no longer just vibrating, it is groaning under the weight of the truth. Julian doesn't move, but the mask of the immaculate patriarch has developed a hairline fracture. I look at the bench. Judge Cross is sitting perfectly still. Her hand is resting on the wood, her fingers curled tight. She isn't watching the lawyers. She is watching the way I sit, the way I refuse to yield an inch of ground. The ghost is no longer just haunting this room. I am dismantling the architecture of his lies, brick by mahogany brick. The silence I kept for days is transforming. It is becoming a weapon. And Julian Sterling finally looks like a man who realizes he is standing in the middle of a minefield he forgot he mapped. The escalation of the fifth day moves from my records to my mind. Julian isn't content with calling me a liar anymore. He wants me declared incompetent. He wants me locked away in a room where my memories can be managed by men in white coats. He brings in Dr. Eris Thorne. The man is a behavioral expert, with an expensive watch and a clinical detachment that is as sharp and cold as a scalpel. He sits in the witness chair like he's perched on a throne, looking down at me with a pity that feels like an insult. What we are witnessing in Alia West, Dr. Thorne tells the court, is not the aftermath of combat. It is a classic presentation of Munchausen by proxy, self-inflicted. She has internalized a narrative of trauma to bridge the emotional distance between her and her father. The tremors, the thousand-yard stare, the hypervigilance, these are not symptoms of a soldier. They are the rehearsed tics of a woman who needs to be the hero of a tragedy that never happened. I sit in the witness chair, my heels are locked against the floor. I don't move, I don't protest, I listen to him describe me like a specimen under glass. Then the prosecution plays the video. It's grainy security footage from a park near my apartment, a summer evening, families on blankets. In the distance, a firework goes off, a sharp, percussive crack. On the screen, I don't just jump, I drop. I am in the dirt in a split second, my hands over my head, my eyes scanning the sky for a threat that isn't there. Is this the extraordinary heroism we were promised? Vance Thorne asks, his voice dripping with venom. Or is this a woman who belongs in a padded room for her own safety? The weight of the injustice feels like a physical pressure, a compressed spring coiled so tightly, it threatens to snap my spine. I feel the sweat pooling at the base of my neck. Suddenly, the courtroom air vanishes. The smell of the lemon wax is gone, replaced by the cloying, metallic stench of burnt metal and scorched earth. I taste copper, I'm back in the dead space. I'm not in a park, I'm in a triage zone, and the sound of that firework wasn't a celebration. It was a mortar ranging in on our position. My body remembers what my father wants the world to believe I made up. I wait for the room to quiet. I wait until the only sound is the hum of the electric lights. Then I look at Dr. Thorne. You call it a performance, doctor, I say. My voice is steady enough to hold a suture. I don't look at the lawyers. I look at the man who thinks he knows my brain. But you're looking at the wrong data. In that video, when the firework goes off, look at my feet. I didn't just drop. I pivoted toward the sound to present my smallest profile. My body calculated the decibel-to-distance ratio and determined it was a surface-level percussion, not a vertical threat. I didn't take cover because I was scared. I took cover because my autonomic nervous system is trained to keep me alive until the bird arrives. I pause, I let the silence settle like ash. Tell me, doctor, in your expert opinion, why are you the one sweating in a room set to 68 degrees? I point to the dark patches under his arms. The doctor stammers. He adjusts his glasses, his clinical mask slipping. He looks at Julian, but Julian is looking at the floor. The gallery is dead silent. I realize then that Julian is terrified. He isn't trying to win a civil suit anymore. He is trying to silence me before the gray folders, the files containing the names of the survivors, can be reached by a subpoena he can't stop. He's trying to bury the medic before she can identify the patient. The validation gap is closing. And as I look at the bench, I see Judge Cross leaning forward. Her hand is resting on the wood, her fingers curled tight against the place where her robe hides her own history. Her gaze is fixed on me with a terrifying, absolute clarity. The spring is about to release. And when it does, it's going to take the whole room with it. The air in the hallway outside courtroom 11C was different from the treated oxygen inside. It was heavy, stagnant, and carried the faint, metallic scent of the building's old plumbing, a scent that, for a fleeting second, smelled like the copper tang of an extraction zone. I was leaning against the cold marble wall, trying to find my center, when the heavy oak doors swung open. Julian Sterling stepped out. He didn't walk, he glided. The space around him seemed to bend to his proximity, a vacuum of power and expensive wool. He stopped inches from me. His presence was an atmospheric pressure that tried to force the air from my lungs. "Drop this, Alia," he hissed. His voice was no longer the smooth cello of the courtroom. It was a serrated blade. "I have just authorized an emergency order through my contacts at the State Department. If you continue to claim affiliation with Iron Suture, if you even whisper that name again in a public record, you won't be walking out of this building. You'll be arrested for the unauthorized disclosure of classified operations. I'll have you in a black site before the sun sets." The escalation hit me like a physical blow. This was the ultimate compression of the spring. Julian wasn't just litigating my character anymore. He was weaponizing the very government I had served to ensure my permanent erasure. He was willing to have his own daughter imprisoned in a nameless cell, rather than admit he couldn't control the narrative of my life. "You're shaking, Alia," he noted. His eyes tracked the small, involuntary tremor in my left hand, the one I had kept hidden beneath the table for days. "That's the sound of your heroism failing you. It's the sound of a little girl who realized she's playing a game she can't win." I looked at the tremor, then I looked at him. Inside, I was calculating. I realized in that moment that Julian was bluffing, or at least, he was desperate. If he truly had the power to make me disappear, he wouldn't be threatening me in a hallway. He would have done it months ago. He was terrified of the gray folders. He knew that Judge Cross had seen through the digital wall I had hit in the library. He knew the subpoena was coming, and he was trying to scare the ghost back into the dark before the light hit it. The smell of the hallway shifted again. The copper of the pipes became the cloying stench of burnt metal from the Humvee wreckage. The institutional hum of the lights became the electric buzz of a dying radio. The memory didn't break me, it sharpened me. "I'm not shaking because I'm scared, Julian," I said. My voice came from a place deep in my chest, a place he hadn't been able to reach in 6 years. It was the voice I used when the morphine was running low and the blood was running high. "I'm shaking because my body remembers what happens to people who stand in the way of a medic and her patient. And right now, the truth is my patient. Step aside." I didn't wait for his response. I pushed past him, my shoulder brushing his navy blazer. The marble of the hallway felt less like a cage and more like a launchpad. The spring was coiled to its breaking point. I could feel the tension humming in my teeth. The emergency order was just the final weight that would trigger the release. I walked back through the oak doors. The bailiff called the room to order. I sat at my empty table, folded my shaking hands, and looked straight at the bench. The institutional coldness of the room didn't matter anymore. I had survived the dust. I would survive the sterling name. The spring was ready. All it needed was a touch. The afternoon session of the 6th day begins in a silence so thick it feels like a physical obstruction. The gallery is packed. The air hums with the static of a crowd, waiting for a kill. Vance Thorne stands at the lectern. He holds the emergency order paperwork aloft like a holy relic. He looks at me with the eyes of a man who has already dug the grave and is just waiting for the body to stop twitching. "Your Honor," Thorne projects, his voice echoing with a theatrical gravity that fills the lemon-polished vacuum of the room. In light of the defendant's persistent claims regarding Operation Iron Suture, a designation that poses a clear and present danger to national security, the prosecution moves for an immediate gag order and a closed-session summary judgment. We cannot allow this fantasy to compromise the lives of actual operatives. The climax is here. I can feel the metal of the spring screaming. It's been compressed for years, held down by my father's money and my mother's shame. I stand up. I don't wait for my turn. I don't wait for permission. The compressed spring snaps. "I am an actual operative," I say. My voice cuts through Thorne's rhetoric like a hot wire through silk. It's the voice of the medic who worked through the night while the world fell apart. And the only danger here is to the reputation of a man who thinks he can buy the silence of the dead. Julian surges forward in his seat, his mouth opening to bark an order. But the gavel doesn't fall. Judge Cross doesn't look at him, she doesn't look at the bailiff. She does something no one in this room expected. She stands up. The room goes into a collective shock. Judges remain elevated, removed, the embodiment of an impartial system. But Genevieve Cross steps down from the bench. Her black robe trails behind her like a shadow as she walks into the well of the court. She stops 3 feet from me. "Mr. Thorne," she says, her voice sounds older now, heavier. "You asked for a witness. You asked for a record that couldn't be forged." The sensory jolt hits me. The institutional coldness of the room vanishes. The fluorescent hum overhead modulates into the electric buzz of a dying radio. The smell of the lemon wax is gone, replaced by the cloying metallic stench of burnt metal and scorched earth. I taste copper. She reaches for the silver clasp at the throat of her robe. With a single, fluid motion, she unfastens it. She slips the heavy fabric from her shoulders. It hits the floor with a soft, final thud. Beneath the robe, she wears a simple, dark sleeveless blouse. She turns her right shoulder toward the gallery, toward the cameras, toward the man who called me a fraud. The release is absolute. Etched into her pale skin is a jagged, starburst scar. It's the unmistakable signature of a shrapnel entry, a wound that had been stabilized by a hemostat in a place without a sterile ceiling. "This is that fantasy, Mr. Thorne," the judge says. Her gaze is fixed on Julian Sterling. "This scar was given to me by a mortar round in a valley 4,000 miles from here. And the only reason this arm is still attached to my body, the only reason I am standing here to preside over this farce, is because a sergeant named Alia West held my brachial artery closed with her bare hands while the world burned around us." The room breaks. The validation gap vanishes in an instant. Julian's face doesn't just turn pale, it disintegrates. The mask of the immaculate patriarch falls away to reveal a man hollowed out by his own arrogance. My mother, Catherine, lets out a small, broken sound, a sob she's been holding since the day I left. "I remember the sequence, Alia," the judge whispers. She turns back to me. Her eyes lock onto mine with a terrifying, beautiful clarity. 7904, I never forgot it. The debt of justice is paid. The ghost has a name. For the first time in my life, the silence in the room isn't a weapon used against me. It's the sound of a lie, finally gasping its last breath. I don't look at Thorne, I don't look at Julian. I look at the woman I saved and I breathe. The spring has snapped. The truth is standing in the middle of the room, and it isn't asking for permission. The atmosphere in courtroom 11C has shifted from a clinical trial to a site of profound reckoning. Judge Cross's robe lies on the floor like a shed skin, a discarded symbol of an office that has momentarily been surpassed by the raw truth of a survivor. The spring has snapped, but the momentum is still moving, carrying the weight of the justice I've been denied for 6 years. The silence that follows the judge's revelation isn't empty. It's heavy with the sound of 100 reputations collapsing at once. The silence is broken not by a gavel, but by the heavy, rhythmic thud of the courtroom's rear doors being thrown open. 2 men in dress blues enter first. Their brass buttons catch the harsh fluorescent light like miniature suns. They move with a synchronized, mechanical precision that makes the civilian lawyers look like uncoordinated children. They are followed by a man in a dark, nondescript suit, carrying a lead-line briefcase secured to his wrist by a steel cable. The gallery parts for them like a receding tide. "Your Honor," the man in the suit says. His voice carries the flat, unshakable authority of the Pentagon. "I am a courier from the Office of the Secretary of Defense. I am here to deliver the gray folder designated iron suture. Julian Sterling surges to his feet. The immaculate patriarch is gone. In his place is a man whose face is a frantic mask of desperate recalculation. "This is an outrage," he shouts. His voice cracks, a sound I've never heard before. "This is a breach of national security. That file is." That file was suppressed by an unauthorized administrative hold. Judge Cross cuts him off. Her voice sounds like a mountain moving. She has stepped back behind the bench, but she hasn't put the robe back on. She stands there in her sleeveless blouse, the scar on her shoulder a visible indictment. A hold that has just been rescinded by an emergency declassification order. The courier places the briefcase on the evidence table. I don't move, I don't help him, I just watch. The briefcase is opened. It isn't full of digital screens or flashy graphics. It's full of paper, thick, cream-colored sheets with top secret stamped in bold, red ink, now struck through with a single, brutal black line. As the man flips through the pages, the sensory jolt hits me again. The smell of the lemon wax in the room is finally overwhelmed. My mind registers the cloying, metallic stench of burnt metal and the copper tang of old blood. I can almost feel the grit of the Kandahar dust between my teeth. These papers are the physical manifestation of that dust. They are the receipts for the blood Julian claimed I never spilled. Judge Cross begins to read. She doesn't read the legal jargon. She reads the citations of valor. She reads about a night in August when Sergeant Alia West ignored a direct order to retreat to the LZ, so she could stabilize 3 critically wounded personnel under sustained small arms fire. She reads about a bronze star with Valor device. She reads about a Purple Heart that was never pinned to a chest. Because the woman who earned it was erased from the system by a father who couldn't handle a daughter he couldn't curate. The validation gap doesn't just close, it's incinerated. I look at Julian. He's no longer looking at the monitor or his lawyers. He's looking at the floor. The wealth that bought him a lifetime of clean sentences has finally failed to buy the silence of the brave. The judge turns to the court reporter, then back to the room. "This case is dismissed with prejudice," she declares. "Furthermore, I am referring Julian Sterling and Vance Thorne to the Department of Justice for the subornation of perjury and the illegal tampering of federal military records. Bailiff, please escort the plaintiff to the processing center." The MPs move toward the plaintiff's table. I don't celebrate. I don't stand up and cheer. I simply exhale, a long, slow breath I feel I've been holding since the day I left that house with a duffel bag and a shaved head. The ghost is gone, only the soldier remains. Julian is led out in a silence that is finally honest. I sit at my empty table, my hands still folded, and I look at Judge Cross. She gives me a single, sharp nod. The debt is paid, the gray folder is open, and for the first time in 6 years, the air in the room actually feels clean. 3 months later, the world has shrunk to a manageable, beautiful size. The institutional cold of courtroom 11C is a fading bruise in my memory. The headlines about the Sterling scandal still flicker on the periphery of the news cycle, stories of indictments, backroom deals gone sour, and the slow, public rot of a dynasty built on shadows. I don't read them, I don't need to, I was there for the collapse. I am in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina now. The air here doesn't taste of copper or magnesium. It tastes of damp earth, pine needles, and the cold, clean promise of rain. It's a silence that isn't empty, it's a silence that breathes. I sit on the porch of the small cabin I purchased, not with Sterling blood money, but with the 6 years of back pay the Army finally released once the gray folder was unsealed. The wood of the porch is rough and honest under my boots. I pull a small, weathered photograph from a cedar chest I keep by the door. It's the one Judge Cross sent me a week after the trial ended. It was taken in a triage tent at 400 hours, minutes after the Kandahar extraction. In the photo, I am covered in a thick layer of gray silt. My hands are stained dark, the blood dried into the creases of my knuckles. My eyes are staring at something 3 feet behind the camera lens. I look terrifying. I look exhausted. But I look real. I run my thumb over the edge of the photo. The sensory jolt is faint now, a ghost limb. For a second, the smell of the pine trees vanishes, replaced by the cloying, metallic stench of burnt metal and scorched earth. I can almost hear the electric buzz of the field lights. I don't push the memory away. I don't fight it. I just let it sit there until it settles back into the paper. On the back of the photo, she had written a single note in a sharp, elegant hand. The truth doesn't need a robe to be heard. Thank you, Alia. My phone buzzes on the wooden table. I don't have many contacts saved. I check the screen. It's a message from a number I recognize but haven't answered in weeks. My mother. She's left the Sterling estate. She's living in a condo in the city, stripped of the neutral mask she wore for 30 years. The message is short. I finally saw the files, Alia. I'm so sorry. Can I come up? I just want to see you. I look at the words for a long time. I think about the debt of justice I carried into that courtroom. I think about the compressed spring that nearly snapped my spine. I realized then that the closure I had been hunting wasn't an apology. It wasn't a confession or a tearful reconciliation. True closure is the absence of the need for any of it. I set the phone down, face down on the table. I don't reply. Not because I'm holding onto the anger, but because I'm finally busy. I'm busy listening to the wind. I'm busy watching the way the light catches the underside of the hemlocks. I'm busy living a life that doesn't require Julian Sterling's permission to exist. I stand up and walk to the edge of the porch. My left hand is steady, no tremor, no phantom hemostat to lock. My heels are flat on the ground. I'm not scanning for an exit or calculating the distance to the nearest cover. I'm just watching the sunset bleed into the valley. My name is Alia West. I am a daughter of nothing, a veteran of a war the public tried to forget, and the owner of a truth that can never be untold. I breathe in the mountain air, deep, slow, and unhurried. The silence is finally, perfectly my own. The weight of a person is not found in the records kept by institutions, nor is it contained within the curated opinions of those who claim to know us. We live in a world obsessed with the appropriate, a world that attempts to flatten the jagged edges of human experience into something that fits neatly into a spreadsheet or a social hierarchy. But the truth is rarely neat. It is found in the scars we carry, the silence we maintain, and the moments where we choose our own soul over the convenience of a polished lie. To respect a human being is to acknowledge the unseen. It is to understand that every person carries a gray folder of their own, a private history of battles fought in the dark and sacrifices made without an audience. When we attempt to erase another's reality to protect our own comfort, we don't just commit an injustice, we lose our own grip on what is real. Identity is not a gift granted by the approval of others. It is a fortress built from the inside out. The philosophy of a life well lived rests on the understanding that we are the only true witnesses to our own integrity. There is a profound, quiet power in reaching the point where you no longer need the world to agree with your history for that history to be valid. Truth is like the mountains. It doesn't ask for permission to stand, and it doesn't move just because someone refuses to look at it. We find peace not when the conflict ends, but when we realize that the only voice that needs to speak our name with honor is our own. Thank you for walking through this journey of silence and reclamation with me. If this story touched a chord in your own history, or if you believe in the power of standing for what is true when the world calls it a lie, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below with where you're listening from. There is power in knowing we aren't alone in the quiet. If you want to see more stories that explore the grit and grace of the human spirit, please consider following and subscribing to the channel. We are just getting started.